The opposition still wants an inquiry into foreign elections interference, and the government still insists one isn't off the table as they consult with the opposition about what that inquiry could look like. Against the backdrop of that continued back and forth, though, some big news today. The head of the RCMP told MPs investigating interference the Mounties have launched a criminal investigation into Beijing's alleged intimidation of Tory MP Michael Chong. Michael Duheme is the commissioner of the RCMP. Hi, Commissioner. Good to see you again. Thank you so much for making the time.
Welcome there, Vassy. Glad to be here.
You testified earlier today, sir, that you first learned of that CSIS intelligence from 2021 on China targeting Michael Chong and his family through the media. When you did learn of it, did it surprise you?
Didn't surprise me. We did learn about it. When we learned about it, like as I mentioned in the cabinet, we took immediate action with investigations because Mr. Chung did come out publicly saying he was intimidated, which falls under the threshold of criminal code, which the RCMP began investigation.
What do you mean by, when you say it didn't surprise you, I guess I wonder why?
Well, it didn't surprise me. Like there's a ton of information that the service doesn't always necessarily share with us. We do have an excellent collaboration with the service. I can't speak for the service why this particular memo never made its way to us, which we are following up to make sure that to ascertain that it never made its way to us. But things happen sometimes.
So you said when you heard about it, you learned of this information, you did commence an investigation. Can you describe in layman's terms exactly what you are investigating?
Well, we're investigating the influence, the intimidation against Mr. Chung and his family. And this falls right in the mandate of the RCMP.
And why is it in the mandate of the RCMP?
Well, under the Security Offence Act and under CSIS Act that defines the offence, the RCMP has the mandate to investigate any foreign interference activities. And
have you interviewed Mr. Chung in the course of this investigation?
I'm not 100% sure where we're at with the investigation. We're investigating, but what stage we're at, I would have to follow up with Vassy.
But it did start right after this news became public. Is that accurate?
It did. That's accurate.
You also mentioned today that there are two other MPs we've learned of since, Jenny Kwan and Aaron O'Toole, who CSIS intelligence, according to them, shows something in a similar vein. We don't know the details. I have not seen, to be totally honest with our audience, the evidence myself at all, or the intelligence, rather, myself at all. But you said that those two have been referred to the Elections Commissioner versus the RCMP investigation taking place into what's alleged happened to Michael Chung. What is the difference?
So the difference, Vassy, is that with Mr. Chung, he reported in public that he and his family were intimidated by the People's Republic of China. We've reviewed the information that was shared with us with regards to other two elected officials, and it was more aligned towards voter suppression or more aligned towards the electoral process and nothing criminal in it. So that's why we reached out to the Commissioner of Canada's election to offer assistance if assistance is required. So we didn't refer it to them, but we reached out to them to offer any assistance, as we have an MOU, as you've heard in the past, with them to assist.
So essentially, in those two cases, it was determined that there was no criminal investigation to be had.
Based on what the team saw, it was no criminal investigations. But again, we're cooperating, or we reached out to the Commissioner of Canada's election to assist if needed.
Are there any other investigations currently under your purview, Commissioner, into China's alleged targeting of other members of Parliament or other politicians?
To my knowledge, those are the only ones we have right now, Vassy.
You have said also today, you testified to the fact that there's over 100 open investigations at the moment around foreign interference. You said that sort of it's a broad scope, right? It's not just what we're talking about right here. It can encompass a lot of other things. Over what period would you say those investigations are taking place?
Over several years, for sure. And to your point, you raise a good point, because people are focusing strictly on the influence on elected officials, but it's much broader than that. We're looking at economic integrity, critical infrastructure, proliferation, transnational repression. So there's a slew of different activities that we are investigating. But I'd date back conservatively would be 3 years for sure.
Do you delineate, or can you delineate for Canadians watching between basically prior to when this became a huge headline before the beginning of this year and after? Like, have you seen, for example, if you could even qualify for us, any uptick in those investigations or allegations you're even looking into since this became really a big story at the beginning of this year?
Wouldn't be able to quantify the uptick from the previous years. What's important here is really to reach out to the communities and build the links with the communities and have people to come forward with that. You've heard me in parliamentary committee today about the importance of the overseas police station getting out to the communities, building that trust with the community and having them to come forward so that will help and assist us in our ongoing investigations.
You did mention where those police stations are concerned that it is your understanding that they have, quote unquote, all been shut down. Have you made any arrests in relation to them?
No, we haven't, but I can assure you that we have ongoing investigations that continue. And again, I invite the people, the general public, if they've seen anything or been witnessed or victim of anything, to come forward to the RCMP.
Why haven't you made any arrests, sir?
Well, anything to do with these types of investigations are sometimes complex. You also need people to come forward as a victim or as a witness. And the reality is some of them are fearful coming forward because of what could happen to them or because what could happen to their families in China.
Is that the sole reason that basically people are hesitant to come forward, or are you left without the tools that you need in order to make those arrests? And I'll tell you exactly what I mean. In the States, they have a foreign agents registry. They were able there to arrest, I believe it was 2 individuals related to police, these types of police stations, so-called police stations, because they hadn't registered on that list. That's the crime that they were able to arrest them for. We don't have that tool here. The government is promising it is to come at some point. But if you had that tool, for example, could you already have made an arrest?
We would welcome as many tools as we can to facilitate the job when it comes to foreign interference. And this is one, the registry would be one. We have to make sure that legislation follows this registry. Having a registry is one thing, but not having legislation to enforce this registry is something, so that's side by side. Any additional tool that would help us and facilitate our work, especially when it comes to foreign interference, as I mentioned earlier, complex to investigate, would be more than welcome.
Are you inhibited, though, from making an arrest, from there being consequences to the fact that China essentially set up these so-called police stations in our country? Are you inhibited from doing that because you lack the tools to do it?
Well, I can't say about these stations right now because the investigation is still ongoing. But as I mentioned previously, any additional tool, any legislation change that would assist us would be welcome. And I know there's discussions on the whole foreign interference and see how we can better position perhaps legislation to facilitate not only our work, but other people's work.
The last time we spoke, you highlighted a specific area where there could be a legislative gap filled, and that was around essentially being able to use CSIS intelligence as evidence in your investigations. You were very clear about that. There was a lot of reaction to the point you were making. Has anyone from government reached out to you to get more information on what those tools, those legislative tools, or how to fill those gaps?
No, but that would be part of Vassy of the ongoing conversations on the way forward. I did mention today in Parliament, in the committee, that it is something that we have to look at. It's not only with the service, but it's also with international partners, is how can we use that information that's shared with us in a criminal procedure and protect that information.
Have there been any of those discussions in the last few months since you first brought it to the public and the government's attention?
Not at my level, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen at the deputy commissioner's level or the assistant commissioner level within the program. I can follow up with that.
Should it have happened at your level?
There's many discussions at my level, but that one hasn't. I haven't had that one since I've been in the chair for the last 3 months.
Just before I let you go, Commissioner, there's also, of course, this huge political debate that I imagine you want to stay out of around whether or not there should be a public inquiry. I wanted to know from your perspective the degree to which you feel the RCMP, if called upon, could participate in that inquiry.
We would cooperate, participate fully as we've done with other inquiries and bring the necessary information forward so that it could be done in a transparent manner.
Do you feel it would be problematic or difficult to be able to share the kinds of information the public could be calling for, or do you think you'd be able to do that?
Without having in-depth knowledge of everything we have on these files, what we will do is cooperate to the fullest and ensure that as many documents as we can be shared if it goes down the lane of an inquiry to make sure that the population knows exactly what took place.
Okay, Commissioner, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it as always.
Thanks, Vassy.